Ladies and gentlemen, there's something tragically beautiful about realizing that someone simply doesn't care. It's not a mistake. It's not miscommunication. It's not because they're busy, confused, or complicated. It's because they don't care. And the moment you accept that truth, without making excuses, without bargaining, without trying to change them, you take your power back. You see, the greatest suffering doesn't come from being alone. It comes from being attached to those who are emotionally absent, trying to ignite a flame in hearts that have gone cold. This speech will challenge your emotional reflexes. It will show you how to let go, not out of anger, but out of awareness. Because once you stop wasting yourself on people who don't care, your life changes. Stay with me till the end. Because what you learn here won't just help you walk away. It will teach you how to never return. Your energy is your currency. Spend it wisely. We often think of energy in terms of productivity, as something to be measured, controlled, and maximized for results. But energy is much deeper than that. It is the essence of your attention, your presence, your spirit. Every time you speak to someone, care for someone, invest emotion in someone, you are spending your energy, not metaphorically, but quite literally. And just like money, energy flows toward what you value. But unlike money, it never comes back in the same form once it's given. It changes you. The tragedy is most people are not conscious of how they spend their energy. They give it away to those who don't appreciate it, to those who take it for granted, to those who don't even notice it. They waste it on arguments that go nowhere, relationships that lead to emptiness, and people who are emotionally bankrupt. It's like pouring water into a cracked glass. It leaks, and you wonder why you're always thirsty for peace. Energy has value. It is sacred. And when you begin to understand that your energy is your life, you will stop distributing it so freely. You will become intentional, because not everyone deserves your time, your thoughts, your concern, or your presence. But society doesn't teach this. Society teaches you to be accessible, to be endlessly kind, to always be available. It praises the selfless, the ones who give everything until there's nothing left. But there's a danger in that. When you give without boundaries, you invite those who take without limits. And the people who don't care about you, they know this. They don't always act out of malice, but they recognize your willingness to overextend yourself. They feed on it. They get used to your kindness, your forgiveness, your emotional labor. And soon, it becomes expected. Not appreciated, just expected. You become a source, not a soul. A convenience, not a companion. That is the moment when your energy starts to feel like a burden instead of a gift, because it's no longer being honored, it's being used. And deep inside, you start to feel it. A quiet exhaustion, a sense of being invisible even when you're present. That's not love, that's emotional erosion. Think about it. How many times have you walked away from a conversation or a relationship feeling drained instead of fulfilled? That is the clearest sign that your energy has been spent without value. It's a transaction where you gave everything and received nothing of equal worth. But here's the truth. This isn't about selfishness. It's about clarity, about knowing that you have a limited amount of energy in a day, in a week, in a lifetime. Every moment you waste trying to be seen by people who refuse to open their eyes is a moment stolen from your own evolution. You are not here to prove your worth. You are here to live it. When you become conscious of your energy, you begin to see your life differently. You no longer chase. You no longer beg for closure or attention. You simply observe. And in that observation, you reclaim yourself. You stop showing up for people who only remember you when they need something. You stop explaining yourself to those who've already decided not to understand you. You stop bending your spirit for those who won't even lean in to listen. Instead, you begin to guard your space. You protect your peace. You give your energy to those who reflect it, who nourish it, who see it as sacred as you do. And something beautiful happens when you do that. Your life becomes lighter. You attract those who resonate with your presence rather than exploit it. You begin to feel whole, not because someone else fills you, but because you no longer allow anyone to empty you. So if there's one thing you remember today, let it be this. Your energy is not infinite, but your awareness of it can be. The moment you begin to treat it like gold, you stop wasting it on those who don't care. And in that moment, you don't lose anything. As anything you lose, anything you gain everything. Indifference is not confusion, it's clarity. We often misread silence as uncertainty. We tell ourselves stories to fill the quiet. Maybe they're just going through something. Maybe they don't know how to express themselves. Maybe if I just hold on a little longer, they'll come around. But indifference is not a lack of emotion. It's the presence of detachment. And detachment speaks louder than words ever could. When someone cares, you feel it. You don't have to decode their behavior, interpret their tone, or guess their intentions. Love doesn't hide in ambiguity. Affection doesn't require explanation. Genuine care is not confusing. It's consistent, clear, and steady. The moment you feel like you're standing in an emotional fog, trying to read signs that aren't there, that is your sign. That is your clarity. People show you how they feel about you, not through dramatic moments, but through quiet decisions. Through how they prioritize you when it's inconvenient. Through how they treat you when they have nothing to gain. Through how they respond, not just when you're at your best, but when you're vulnerable, unseen, or hurting. If someone is indifferent to your presence, to your pain, or to your joy, that is not a misunderstanding. That is a mirror, one that shows you your place in their life without sugarcoating it. Yet we resist that clarity. Why? Because the truth hurts. Because acknowledging someone doesn't care forces us to confront our own attachment, our own hope, our own illusions. So we cling to confusion. We convince ourselves that we need more time, more signs, more conversations to understand. But the reality is, deep down, we already know. We just don't want to accept what we know. But clarity, even when painful, is a gift. It liberates you from the chains of emotional fantasy. It returns you to yourself. It says, you are no longer required to fight for someone's attention. You are free to walk away from people who see you as optional. Indifference is the soul's way of telling you, this path has ended. It may not come with closure or a loud goodbye. Often, it comes with silence, with distance, with cold replies, or forgotten birthdays. And still, we wait. We wait for the emotional grand finale that will never come. But the absence is the ending. The withdrawal is the answer. When you stop mistaking indifference for confusion, something powerful happens. You reclaim your emotional clarity. You stop overanalyzing texts. You stop checking who watched your story. You stop pretending that breadcrumbs are a banquet, and instead, you begin to see clearly who makes space for you without being asked, who values your presence without condition, and who cares enough to make you feel safe, not unsure. Clarity isn't cruel. It's kind, because it saves you from wasting your heart on someone who's already made their decision in silence. It teaches you to respond to energy, not just words. It teaches you that love isn't supposed to make you anxious, confused, or constantly questioning your worth. It's supposed to feel like home, not a puzzle. When you embrace clarity over confusion, your world changes. You begin to prioritize what's real, not what's idealized. You learn to walk away not with bitterness, but with peace. Not because you stopped caring, but because you started caring about yourself more. So the next time someone's behavior makes you feel like you're not enough, remember that is not a test of your value. It's a reflection of their choice. And in that choice, you find clarity. Don't run from it. Don't romanticize the ambiguity. Don't keep chasing after people who have already emotionally exited. Instead, honor what's true, even if it's not what you wanted, because clarity will give you what confusion never can: freedom. And in that freedom, you finally stop trying to be seen by those who refuse to look. You start seeing yourself. You start loving from a place of strength, not desperation. You stop performing, proving, or persuading. You simply become yourself, unapologetically, in full clarity. Self-worth isn't proven by sacrifice. There is a quiet, damaging belief that many people carry without realizing. The idea that if you love more, give more, and suffer more for someone, you will eventually be seen, chosen, and valued. That somehow your pain will earn you a place in someone's heart. That your selflessness, your constant showing up, your tolerance of disrespect or neglect will convince them of your worth. But the truth is much simpler and far more liberating. Your worth doesn't increase when you shrink yourself for others. It doesn't rise when you tolerate more than you should. It doesn't become more visible through your pain. In fact, sacrificing yourself to be loved only teaches others that you are willing to be diminished. It sends a message: you can neglect me and I'll still be here. You can treat me poorly and I'll still try harder. And what you tolerate becomes the standard. Slowly, you start to believe that enduring mistreatment is love, that your suffering is noble, that your ability to stay in the wrong place is a sign of strength. But let's be honest, staying isn't always strong. Sometimes it's fear, fear of being alone, fear of not being wanted, fear that if you walk away, you'll never find something better, and that fear convinces you to keep sacrificing your time, your voice, your peace. You begin to perform your pain, hoping someone will finally notice and say you matter. But they won't. Not in the way you need them to. Because the kind of love that has to be earned through suffering is not love, it's emotional survival. And survival is not where you thrive, it's where you lose yourself. Real self-worth doesn't announce itself loudly. It doesn't scream, "Look at everything I'm doing for you." It exists quietly, confidently. It sets boundaries without guilt. It says, "I can love you and still leave if I am not being loved in return." It understands that giving too much in the wrong place isn't compassion, it's self-abandonment. When you constantly give in hopes of being validated, you enter a dangerous cycle. You begin to attach your identity to being needed, not being respected. You wear your sacrifices like a badge, as if they prove you're worthy. But sacrifice, when unreciprocated, becomes silent self-destruction. It chips away at your joy, your authenticity, your power. You start to live in reaction to someone else's absence instead of in alignment with your own presence. There's a difference between compromise and self-erasure, between caring deeply and losing yourself in someone else's emptiness. Love should never require you to betray your own soul. The right people won't ask you to shrink. They won't be blind to your efforts, nor will they need your suffering as proof of your devotion. You do not need to exhaust yourself to be chosen. You do not need to explain your value, prove your loyalty, or break yourself into pieces, hoping someone will take notice. You are not here to audition for love. You are love. And the moment you stop trying to prove that is the moment you begin to live from a place of truth. That truth will feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you spent years tying your worth to how much you give. You'll feel guilt for choosing yourself. You'll wonder if you're being selfish. But in time, you'll realize something profound. Preserving your energy is not selfish, it's sacred. Respecting your limits is not cruel, it's wisdom. Walking away from people who only value what you do for them rather than who you are is not abandonment, it's alignment. There is power in loving deeply, but there is greater power in loving wisely, in knowing when to stay and when to step back, in giving not out of lack, but from a place of overflow. And that overflow only comes when you recognize that your worth is not something anyone else can give or take. It's already within you. So stop using sacrifice as your love language. Stop bleeding to make others comfortable. Stop believing that the more you suffer, the more you'll be loved, because true love doesn't demand your pain. It invites your presence. And anyone who can't see your worth, unless it's costing you your soul, was never seeing you to begin with. Your worth is not proven by how much you lose for someone. It's remembered when you choose not to lose yourself again. Attachment to the wrong people creates spiritual debt. There is a price we pay, not with money, not with time, but with something much deeper. When we stay connected to people who are not aligned with our soul, every interaction, every emotional entanglement with someone who drains you, disrespects you, or disturbs your peace builds an invisible cost. And over time, that cost turns into what can only be described as spiritual debt, a heaviness you carry in your spirit even when the person is no longer around. We don't realize this at first. Attachment feels warm, it feels familiar. It gives the illusion of connection. But not all connections are sacred. Some are lessons. Some are mirrors, and some are anchors. And when you mistake an anchor for a lifeline, you drown trying to hold on. You see, attachment to the wrong people doesn't just slow you down, it distorts your sense of self. You start bending your values to keep them close. You silence your intuition to avoid conflict. You override the discomfort in your soul because your heart is too invested to let go. And that's where the debt begins. Because your soul always knows. It whispers. It aches. It signals when something or someone is not for you. And when you ignore those signals, you borrow against your peace. What makes it even more painful is that most of this debt is self-inflicted. Not because we're weak, but because we confuse attachment with love. We believe that holding on is proof of commitment, that staying loyal, even when it hurts, means we are good people. But there's a difference between loyalty and self-betrayal. Loyalty, given to someone who has no intention of growing with you, becomes a prison. And you're the one who holds the key yet refuses to use it. This is how spiritual debt works. It doesn't come in a moment of pain. It accumulates. slowly, subtly. It shows up as emotional fatigue, as a lack of joy, as anxiety when you hear their name, as a growing distance between who you are and who you used to be. It erodes your confidence. It clouds your clarity. It makes you question your intuition, your boundaries, even your worth. And perhaps the hardest part is that the longer you stay attached to the wrong person, the harder it becomes to recognize yourself. You begin to adapt. You become skilled at emotional compromise. You learn how to justify what should never be acceptable. You start calling dysfunction normal and abandonment space. And before you know it, you're emotionally bankrupt. Giving, 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 with nothing left for yourself. But the truth is, you are not obligated to carry people who refuse to meet you with the same energy. You are not required to pay the emotional bills of someone who keeps withdrawing from your spirit without ever depositing anything meaningful in return. Love is not meant to leave you empty. Connection is not meant to cost you your sanity. And attachment is not meant to feel like a trap. You don't owe anyone your peace. You don't owe them your silence in the face of disrespect. You don't owe them endless forgiveness when there is no effort to change. The moment you recognize that someone is costing you your joy, your growth, your alignment, that is your cue. That is your moment to release the debt. Cutting ties with someone who no longer belongs in your life isn't cruelty. It's spiritual accountability. It's recognizing that your soul deserves rest, not repair, after every interaction. It's understanding that not everyone is meant to walk with you, and that some connections are simply there to teach you the value of disconnection. And when you finally release that weight, when you choose to step away from the person who has become a spiritual burden, you begin to rise. You begin to feel light again. You remember what it feels like to be whole, to be clear, to be you. You stop borrowing against your future peace just to survive your present situation. Because at the end of the day, no connection is worth the cost of your soul. No attachment is worth your awakening. Let go of what no longer honors you. Release the people who require you to go into death just to feel loved. Peace is not something you earn through suffering. It's something you claim when you realize you were never meant to carry what was never meant to carry what was never yours to begin with. Detachment is strength, not bitterness. So often, when you begin to step back, to stop responding, to stop pouring your heart into people who treat it carelessly, you're labeled as cold. You're accused of being distant, selfish, even unkind. But what most don't understand is that true detachment doesn't come from hatred. It comes from wisdom, from clarity, from finally understanding the weight of emotional misplacement. Detachment is not the absence of love. It is the presence of self-respect. There comes a point where you realize that not every relationship is meant to be saved. Not every connection is healthy to maintain. And not everyone you care about is capable of reciprocating that care. When this truth begins to settle in your spirit, the need to cling, to explain, to fix, it all begins to fade, not because you've stopped feeling, but because you've started seeing clearly. Detachment is the quiet decision to no longer hand your peace over to people who thrive in chaos. It's choosing to no longer fight for a seat at a table where your presence is barely acknowledged. It's no longer begging someone to understand your heart when they've already chosen to dismiss it. It is, in essence, the act of choosing yourself without apology. But that choice doesn't come easily. It often arrives through pain, through exhaustion, through too many nights of questioning what more you could have done. You reach a moment when you are no longer willing to abandon your own emotional safety just to maintain a connection. And that moment becomes a turning point. The world may try to convince you that detachment is cruel, that walking away is giving up, but it's not. Giving up is when you stop believing in your own value. Detachment is when you finally start honoring it. You stop arguing for your worth. You stop shrinking in someone else's shadow just to be accepted. You stop bleeding emotionally in hopes that someone else will finally notice the wound. There is nothing bitter about preserving your soul. There is nothing wrong with choosing stillness over stress or clarity over confusion. Detachment doesn't mean you no longer care. It means you are no longer controlled. It's a form of inner strength that says, I can love you, but I won't lose myself in the process. That kind of maturity takes time. It takes tears, and it takes incredible courage. In a world that glorifies chasing, fixing, and enduring, detachment is revolutionary. It is a refusal to engage in relationships that dishonor your spirit. It's stepping away from those who require you to stay small, stay silent, or stay broken just to be close. It's not about punishing anyone. It's about protecting your peace. There will always be people who don't understand your silence, who misinterpret your distance. Let them. Your path is not to be explained to those who never cared enough to walk it with you. Detachment doesn't demand understanding from others. It only requires truth from yourself. And when you begin to walk in that truth, something powerful happens. Your energy shifts. You stop chasing people. You stop chasing closure. You stop waiting for apologies that will never come. You simply move forward with grace, with dignity, and with a quiet strength that only those who've known deep emotional pain truly understand. Detachment is not bitterness. Bitterness is holding on to the pain. Detachment is letting it go. Bitterness keeps the wound open. Detachment allows it to heal. Bitterness replays the betrayal. Detachment rewrites the narrative, not from a place of blame, but from a place of growth. And the most beautiful thing? Detachment makes space. Space for new energy. Space for people who don't require you to prove your worth. Space for experiences that nourish rather than drain you. Space for you to rediscover your own voice, your own joy, your own wholeness. So don't let anyone guilt you into believing that walking away is weakness, that letting go means you never cared. Sometimes letting go is the highest act of love. Love for yourself, and even love for the other person, because you finally stop enabling their comfort at the cost of your peace. Detachment is not the end of feeling, it is the beginning of freedom. You are not here to convince anyone of your value. You are here to honor it. There's a deep misunderstanding that many of us carry from a very young age, that our worth is something that has to be proved, that in order to be loved, respected, or accepted, we must perform, we must achieve, we must please, we must impress. And slowly, without even realizing it, we begin to hand over our value to other people as if they hold the authority to decide it, but they don't. They never did. Your value is not up for debate. It's not determined by someone else's recognition, approval, or attention. It's not something you earn by being good enough for others. It's something you already possess by simply being. And when you forget that, you start running on an emotional treadmill, exhausting yourself to prove to people who don't see you that you're worthy of being seen. This is where so much of our inner suffering comes from. The belief that we must explain our worth, that we must defend it, argue for it, and keep proving it in the face of neglect, indifference, or rejection. But real value doesn't need validation. Just like a diamond doesn't stop being a diamond because someone is too blind to recognize it, your light doesn't stop shining just because someone else refuses to look. There's a subtle desperation that shows up when we forget this truth. We start overextending. We become too agreeable, too accommodating, too eager to please. We tolerate poor treatment. We accept less than we deserve, not because we don't feel pain, but because we're secretly hoping that one day our loyalty, our effort, our presence will be enough to change someone's mind. But you were never meant to beg for your place in someone's life. You were meant to belong without negotiation. When you make your value dependent on how others treat you, you give away your power. You become reactive, always adjusting yourself to match someone else's expectations. But people will always see you through the lens of their own limitations. Some are not capable of recognizing beauty unless it's packaged in a way they understand. Others can only love when it feels convenient or familiar, and some are too caught up in their own chaos to truly see anyone at all. So, what do? You stop trying to be chosen. You stop needing to be explained. You stop performing for people who have already decided not to appreciate what you bring, and instead, you begin to honor your value in the most powerful way possible, by living it, by setting boundaries, by choosing silence over unnecessary explanation, by walking away from situations that ask you to shrink, and by standing firm in who you are, even when the world tries to reshape you. You honor your value by no longer placing it in the hands of those who don't know how to hold it, by no longer chasing validation that leaves you empty. You don't need to become anything more to be worthy of love. You don't need to fit someone else's mold to deserve respect. You don't need to keep proving yourself to those who choose not to see your heart. This kind of self-honor is quiet. It doesn't demand attention. It doesn't seek applause. It simply exists like a deep current beneath the surface, steady, powerful, and unshaken by outside noise. It shows up in the decisions you make, the boundaries you keep, the people you allow near your soul. It shows up in your silence, your grace, your refusal to let the world cheapen your spirit. And the more you live from this place, the more peace you'll find. You'll begin to attract people who don't need convincing, who see you without effort, who love you without condition. And, even more importantly, you begin to feel whole without needing to be understood. You are not here to chase acceptance. You are not here to win love as a prize. You are here to be, fully and unapologetically. To walk in your own truth, no matter who refuses to recognize it. To stay rooted in your worth, even when the world overlooks it. Let them misunderstand you. Let them walk away. Let them doubt. Because the people who truly see you, who are meant for you, will never need a presentation to appreciate your presence. Your value was never theirs to decide. It has always been yours to embody. The moment you stop wasting yourself on people who don't care, your life becomes a garden, not a battlefield. You begin to thrive in places of mutual energy, mutual love, mutual respect. You no longer beg. You no longer prove. You no longer dilute yourself for someone who never had the capacity to receive you. So walk away, not because you're cold, but because you finally become warm to yourself. The world changes the moment you do.